We now travel to Cape Town, Kapalotumo, to meet Methodist minister John van der Laar. John helps churches turn their Sunday services into places of transformation in which worshippers learn to live out their faith in their daily lives, especially in addressing social and justice issues in the world. Asihlangane no John.
Each star that dies,
John van der Laar is a Methodist minister who has been seconded by the Methodist Church to a consultancy and publishing ministry. He trains congregations in the theology of worship, the practice of music and other arts in the worship service.
Methodists are a Protestant denomination. Obviously our history takes us back to England, to the Wesley brothers and their work way back, particularly outside of the church. But we have a lot in common with the Anglicans, particularly with other churches like the Presbyterian Church, the Congregational Church, and there have been a lot of conversations between those churches in how we can work together. Perhaps what sets us apart, our main difference as Methodists, is what John Wesley famously called the four alls. All people can be saved, all people must be saved, all people can know that they're saved, which is really about assurance of your relationship with God, and all people can be saved to the uttermost, that we can be completely transformed by Christ. And those emphases, which are common, I guess, to most Christian faiths, we put particular importance on. What makes me different is that I've been seconded in our language, which means the church has set me apart to a specialized ministry. And my role then is that I work as, for want of a better name, I guess, a worship consultant within the Methodist Church and sometimes outside of the Methodist Church. So I carry less pastoral work, the visiting, the counseling, than other ministers would. I do almost none of that. But I do a lot of teaching and training, a lot of writing and producing of resources that are used in the worship life of our church. The publishing that I do is predominantly books. I have one book that's out called Food for the Road, which is an exploration of communion and how that helps us worship better and then how that helps us live better. But I also produce CDs of worship music to help provide resources for the churches for their worship that can help address some of the needs in the church that we have today, particularly here in South Africa.
John wrote his master's thesis on the relationship between spirituality and music, and he feels that music is a spiritual agent for positive change.
It has a spiritual quality to it, and so it provides a great bridge for us to connect with the spiritual world. In terms of our worship life, it also becomes a carrier of the lyrics we sing, which enables us to express our devotion more effectively. It has a teaching and training role. One researcher that I read some years ago said that the faith of most people is formed more by the hymns that they sing than by the sermons they listen to, which is a challenge for me as a preacher. So it has that teaching role. It has the ability to speak to us at a level deeper than just our mind, and so it provides tremendous comfort and wholeness, challenge, inspiration. So it's very powerful, and it really is an agent of transformation, I believe.
This church was built 112 years ago, and it is such a different congregation who live here today than that congregation that started all those years ago. I am the first woman minister to ever stand in that pulpit. I'm the first one who stands there with her hair loose, and it's an incredible privilege to be a part of this community. But one of the themes that has gone right through the life of this church is that we have had a commitment to inclusivity right from the word go. If you take something like our pew notices that we have records of dating all the way back to 1929, you will see many, many times the congregation called to meetings on the rights of all peoples. I think the high point of that is in the 1960s when Reverend Theo Kotzer stood out and spoke up so strongly, and we had so many multicultural meetings in this place.
I want to suggest that what worship is intended for when you go through the scriptures is that it's intended to change us. There's a verse in 2 Corinthians 3:18 where the Apostle Paul talks about Moses going up the mountain to receive the law and coming back and his face glowing because of his meeting with God. So much so that he had to wear a veil. And Paul uses that as an illustration of how we get transformed, how we begin to reflect something of Christ as a result of our worship. So I believe we come here in order to learn, in order to recognize God's presence in our lives, in order to be transformed by an encounter with God, so that when we leave this place, we live differently. We engage with the struggles of our life differently. And more than that, we're able to bring life and strength and inspiration to others simply because of who we are and because we've been in the place of worship.
John uses multimedia and social media networking to spread the word of God via his blog and website.
My website reaches people in about 20 or 30 countries. People use my resources all over the world. That couldn't happen without the internet. And so it's special for me. It feels like a privilege to be able to contribute to worship that is happening in churches all over the world from my little corner here in South Africa. So certainly the internet has an impact on worship. They're also wonderful gifts that can help us grow, help us connect with others, help us get a sense of what people of faith from all over the world are doing, and that can enrich us and lead us deeper into our worship as well.
The one who died, including in our